Before all of this happened, I always believed in the value of structure and clear boundaries in relationships. Throughout my life, I've prioritized stability and being able to predict outcomes, especially with those closest to me. This mindset influenced how I navigated friendships, my career, and most importantly, my marriage. I never imagined that I'd find myself here today, facing decisions I never thought I'd have to make. Life, as I've learned, often throws unexpected challenges, and we have no choice but to face them head on. Lorna and I seemed like the perfect couple, or at least that's what I thought. We shared dreams of building a future, raising a family, and growing old together. But in recent months, things began to change, and I started to feel the weight of unspoken tension. It started with little things, a lack of connection, subtle shifts in her behavior. At first, I blamed stress or the natural ups and downs of marriage. Little did I know these small signs were leading to something much bigger and far more destructive. I'm Dave, and instead of giving you a physical description, I'd rather explain my beliefs. By sharing these values, you'll get a sense of who I am. Despite everything that's just happened, I want to make it clear that I'm not a villain. A truly evil person would enjoy what I've done. I didn't. It was simply something I had to do, required by my principles. My character is built on respect, for myself and for others. I offer that respect to everyone unless they give me a reason not to. When that line is crossed, I walk away and never look back. I also believe in always striving to be the best version of yourself, and I hold others to that same standard. Sure, some will achieve more than others, but as long as you try your best, I'll respect you. Disrespect me once, though, and you better watch out. After respect, I value loyalty and trust the most. I will never lie or deceive those I respect. I'm loyal to a fault, but only to those who deserve it. Notice the careful if. Once you lose my trust, loyalty and respect are gone too. I strongly believe in justice. Good things should happen to good people and bad things to bad people. I'm also old-fashioned. If you wrong me, you don't need to worry about lawsuits, but you'd better be careful in dark alleys. If I make a deal with a handshake and it falls through, check the obituaries. My name will be there. I see myself as methodical, romantic, and loving. I also firmly believe in gender equality. Not just in words, but in the conviction that your gender makes no difference in how I treat or what I expect from you. That might explain why I did what I did. Did I mention I'm methodical? Let me prove it by starting from the beginning. My suggestion that my wife of 7 years cut ties with her friend Jenny went ignored. Jenny had moved down the street last year. Her husband, Bill, is a shift worker I've only met a couple of times. Something about Jenny rubs me the wrong way. I can't put my finger on it, but I have a gut feeling about her. Still, I respect that it's Lorna's choice. She doesn't have many friends, but she's fiercely loyal to the ones she does. Jenny doesn't like me, and it's obvious she's trying to influence Lorna. More than once, I've walked in on them, and their conversation immediately stopped. I began to realize something was wrong with our marriage. Small things started to pile up. Not being able to reach Lorna on her days off and her evasive answers were one issue. Her inability to make eye contact with me lately was another. I've always believed that the eyes are windows to the soul, and sunglasses are the blinds. The biggest sign was our sex life, which went from twice a week to nothing at all over the last 4 weeks. Even stranger was that sometimes when I initiated closeness, she seemed willing at first, but then shut down. It was like her eyes turned off. I asked many times if something was wrong, but she insisted there wasn't. Last week, out of frustration, I suggested counseling. Lorna just turned away and cried. When she stopped, it looked like she wanted to say something, but then her walls went up again. The most confusing part was how inconsistent her behavior was with someone trying to get pregnant. Unless, damn, a terrible thought crossed my mind. What if she'd given up on me as the seed donor and was seeing other men? It would explain why she wasn't as sexually frustrated as I was and why she was avoiding me. Guilt. But that didn't make sense. We'd only been trying for 2 months before she cut me off. Well, if she wasn't going to admit to cheating, I'd have to catch her the old-fashioned way. Lorna managed our family's finances since she had the most free time. I had to be cautious to avoid any noticeable, unexplainable expenses showing up on our statements, so I kept my surveillance low cost. I paid cash for 2 small voice recorders that transmitted to a base station. It seemed like a good first step. If they didn't capture anything useful, I could always upgrade later and use a GPS tracker. I placed 1 recorder in the kitchen, which would cover both the kitchen and the lounge, and the other in our bedroom. I hid the receiver in the ceiling, a place Lorna avoided due to her fear of spiders. About a week later, the only relevant conversation I picked up left me both confused and somewhat relieved. It didn't sound like Lorna was cheating, but I still had no idea what was going on. The conversation took place in the kitchen on one of Lorna's days off. "So, Lorna, what did you think of that?" Jenny asked. "I don't know, Jenny. It was intense, but are you sure Bill likes it?" "He didn't exactly look like he was enjoying it," Lorna replied. "I've told you before, he doesn't really enjoy it in the moment, but afterward, he knows he's in for a week of incredible sex. The only time I've seen him upset was when I misjudged my timing, and my period started that night. He missed out and sulked for a whole week. I still don't get it, Jen. How can you respect Bill if he puts up with that?" "Oh, girl, today was nothing. You should see what we usually do. I took it easy on Bill since it was only the second time you were there watching. You wouldn't believe the thrill I get when I go up to Bill, tied to his chair with his little tool caged, and give him his choice for the day." "What choice?" Lorna asked, clearly intrigued. "It's different each time. I'll ask Bill if we can do something different next time you're around." "Crap, I've got to go. Bill's still tied up." Shortly after, the bedroom recorder picked up a buzzing sound, followed by Lorna having multiple screaming peaks, clearly showing that whatever she had witnessed with Jenny and Bill had turned her on. Her Zex toy had gotten quite a workout. While it was clear Lorna had been excited by something she saw, I couldn't quite figure it out. The conversation seemed to suggest, no, surely no man would go along with that. Naive of me, right? I didn't understand where all of this was headed, so I decided to wait. I only had to wait a week for the next incident, again on Lorna's day off, and once more in the kitchen. Yeah, I asked Bill if I could do the second hand, or straight from the source thing again, but he put his foot down. He said not while you're around. The only reason he even let you be there in the first place was because he thought he might have a shot with you, Jenny explained. Well, that's never happening. For God's sake, don't tell him that. If you burst that bubble, your spectator privileges are gone. Okay. So, how was the last week with Bill? Lorna asked. As great as ever. After I got home from here, I untied him and he did his usual cleanup. Then we screwed till supper. The Zex is always fantastic, but the week after is almost as good. It's like honeymoon Zex all over again. There was a pause in the conversation as the sound of a kettle boiling could be heard. So how are things with Dave going? The poor guy must be dying. It's been 6 weeks now, Jenny asked. It's getting harder and harder to turn him down. If it wasn't for Mother's little helper, I would have exploded by now. You know, Zex toys. They feel great, but they leave you feeling kinda unfulfilled. I know what you mean, but hang in there. How about telling him you're cutting him off to build up his potency? That might buy you more time. Another few weeks and Dave will agree to anything. Maybe next week you could go with Bill and pretend he's Dave. It won't be the same, but at least you'll get what you need and buy more time. No way, Jen. I would never cheat on Dave. I love him too much to disrespect him like that. Plus, there's the prenup I told you about. If Dave ever found out I cheated, I'd be gone in a heartbeat. I'm 39, Jen. If I don't have kids now, I never will. I paused the recording. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Lorna. I especially appreciated the comment about respect, though it seems we have different ideas on what constitutes disrespect. Yes, it's wise of you to remember the prenup. The cheating party walks away with nothing. Now, I could see where this was likely headed, and I made a mental note to set aside some time to decide how far I'd let things go. I resumed listening to the recording. I still don't know. As aroused as Dave must be, I just can't see him going along with this. I'm thinking of backing out. I can't risk losing him, not for some extramarital stuff. It's already hard enough looking him in the eyes and seeing seed in them. It just feels wrong, Lorna said. Haven't you heard a word I've said? This isn't just about extramarital Zex. It's the high you get from the control. Having him sit there helpless and desperate, knowing he'll do anything you want just to keep you. There's nothing like watching your husband see you with another man to trigger that primal competition in the male. Deep down, they all want to be dominated. Bill did it. My ex did it. They all protest for a while, but once their fragile pride is soothed, they run to the chair every time, Jenny explained. No, Jen, I've made up my mind. I don't want to risk my future happiness. It's not worth it. Dave mentioned counseling again this week. What risk? There is no risk, Lorna. Let him stew a little longer to maximize your chances, then hit him with it. You're not cheating, so he has no reason to leave, and the prenup isn't triggered. Worst case scenario? He says no, and you've lost nothing. He won't want a divorce where he loses the house, half his money, and has to pay alimony. So no risk, and the possibility of amazing sex for as long as you want. You can't lose, girl. Okay, Jin, I'll think about it. Well, make up your mind soon or your watching days are over. The Zex toy got more use that afternoon. I was fed up with the situation. Time to turn up the pressure. I still wasn't sure how I'd react when their little game reached its climax, but I was increasingly certain it would. Jenny was offering Lorna something no single man could compete with. I'll admit the idea was completely foreign to me at first. But maybe watching Lorna get screwed in front of me could be interesting. It was time to force a decision. When Lorna came to bed, I expressed my desire, but got the expected rejection. Lorna, have you ever heard of conjugal rights? I asked. No, what are they? They're the rights of a husband to have sex with his wife. Well, I'm claiming anti-conjugal rights, the wife's right to say no. I stayed quiet for a bit, carefully choosing my next words. Well, if you keep turning me down, won't tell me why, and refuse counseling, will you give me permission to meet my needs outside the marriage? There was an explosion from her side of the bed. What? No way! There's no way you're getting it outside this house. I should be enough for you. Lorna stopped as she realized the contradiction in her own words. A look of pain, anger, and confusion crossed her face. She jumped out of bed and stormed out of the room. I need to talk to Jenny, she muttered as she left. I stayed in bed as she went to the living area, hearing her mumble on the kitchen phone. About half an hour later, she tiptoed back into the bedroom, assuming I was asleep. She slipped quietly into bed beside me. I gave her 5 minutes to settle in. Lorna, I don't know what kind of nonsense Jenny is feeding you, but can't you see how destructive it is? I asked softly. She's my friend. Well, I really think you should reconsider that friendship before it destroys what's left of our marriage. I don't know exactly what she's filling your head with, but anyone can see it's not going to lead to anything good. The next morning, I stayed in bed until Lorna left for work. Once she was gone, I got the ladder and retrieved the kitchen recorder from the ceiling. It had picked up the late-night phone call, or at least Lorna's side of it. She sounded desperate, recounting our conversation from earlier. I had hoped she might pull out of this madness. To say I was disappointed by the outcome is an understatement. After Lorna's tearful rant, there was a long pause. Then she said, Jin, are you sure about what you said the other day? Are all men like Bill? If you push them hard enough, will they actually enjoy being dominated? More silence. Well, as you said, I have nothing to lose. Watching you and Bill turns me on so much. Yes, I'll do it, but I can't drag this out much longer. Can we speed up the plan? More silence. All right, I'll come over tomorrow night and we'll discuss tactics. Bye. That day, the atmosphere in the Smith household was tense. After dinner, Lorna told me she was going to Jenny's. Are you going to break it off with her like I suggested? I asked. No, Dave. I grabbed her and made her look me in the eyes. Please, Lorna. Without another word, she pulled away from me and left. I snuck over to Jenny's house, thinking about how powerful lust can be. Since it was dark, I circled the house, but couldn't find a spot where I could see or hear what was happening inside. For the next stage of this drama, I'd be flying blind. I was fast asleep when my loving wife returned the next day. Once again, I stayed in bed until Lorna left for work. This time, I went straight to Jenny's house. Since Lorna had already mentioned Jenny in the context of our marriage issues, I figured this visit wouldn't give too much away. Jenny opened the door, still in her robe. She wanted to get dressed, but I told her my message wouldn't take long. I never even stepped off the porch. Jenny, I know you and Lorna are up to something. I'm guessing you're trying to convince her to do something she doesn't really want to. I also bet you think there's no risk for you. You don't know me well, but let me tell you, I'm not one to forgive and forget. I hold grudges. For your own sake, I suggest you use your persuasive powers to talk her out of this instead of into it. At that point, she slammed the door in my face. Later that night, after another quiet dinner, Lorna went back to Jenny's house. I followed her again, and this time the kitchen window was slightly open, and I could hear parts of their conversation. They were discussing my visit earlier. No, this is great news, Lorna, Jenny said. This proves he thinks I'm trying to get you to cheat. So, when you hit him with the plan, he'll be off balance. Plus, he'll be so relieved that you're not cheating, he'll go along with whatever we suggest. Just then, I accidentally knocked over a small plant, causing a scene. I quickly made a run for it. Again, I was asleep when Lorna returned. The next evening, I came home to the smell of a gourmet meal. Lorna had gone all out. focusing on both taste and presentation. Here we go, I thought. She kept up her cheerful small talk all night, but her nervous glances betrayed her. I waited for her to bring up what was really on her mind. Bedtime came with no confrontation. To apply some pressure, I snuggled close and touched her bosoms. She actually responded for about 30 seconds before pulling away. I casually asked, "Have I done something wrong? Lorna, I really think we should consider counseling again." As expected, she got angry. The next morning, I decided to play dirty. I took her Zex toy from the bathroom and removed the spring from the battery compartment. If we were playing the blue balls game, 2 could participate. The following 2 nights were the same old routine. When I returned from golfing, Jenny was at our house, but she left in a hurry. It was Saturday night, and I used the excuse of needing to wake up early for church to head to bed by 9:30. Lorna followed shortly after. Hoping she'd be more open in the dark, I turned the light off immediately. Once we were settled, I asked, "Okay, Lorna, what's on your mind?" She didn't say anything, so I continued. "I'm guessing there's something you're struggling to tell me. You've cut me off from Zex for almost 2 months now, so I assume it's something sexual. Are you cheating on me? Are you trying to work up the courage to confess?" "No, Dave, how could you think that? I love you and would never do anything like that," she exploded. "Then please tell me what's going on before I decide to leave. Or worse, the next time a woman propositions me." That got her attention. "What women? When?" "All the time at work. I'm well off in shape and with all modesty, not bad looking. I doubt a week goes by without some girl flirting with me." "All right, Dave, give me a minute and I'll tell you what's on my mind," she said, clearly nervous. After about 5 minutes, she finally spoke. "Like I said, Dave, I've never cheated on you and wouldn't want to, but there's something I'd like to try." More silence. "I know you don't like her, but Jenny's been telling me about what she and Bill do in the bedroom. It sounds way more exciting than what we do." "Wait a minute," I interrupted. "You've never complained about our Zex life in 8 years. I know, Dave, you've always been a great and considerate lover. I was happy with what we had. But after Jenny described what they do, she said it's 10 times better than anything we've done. I just want to try it once or twice before we settle down as parents." "Are you sure she's not exaggerating? Could she be misleading you?" I asked, suspicious. "No, when I heard her talk about it, it was obvious from her excitement that she really loves it." I decided to let her little slip at the start of her response go without comment. "So, dear, what exactly do you and Jenny have in mind for me?" I asked, unsure I really wanted to know the answer. "Well, it's not too bad, Dave. Jenny has Zex with other men in front of Bill," Lorna blurted out. "It's not about love, it's just casual Zex. It's not cheating since Bill is there watching." "So you're asking for a ménage à trois?" I clarified. "No, Dave. You wouldn't get to have Zex with me. Only the other guy would. Jenny calls it betraying. It's like you're giving me as a gift to another man, and I'm giving you the gift of watching. I enjoy it while you watch, and then afterward, you reclaim me by making love to me. Jenny says that's the best part for Bill, too. Afterward, they screw for a week straight." "We haven't done that since our honeymoon," I noted dryly. "Jenny says if you're uncomfortable watching, the first few times you could leave the house while I do it here. She insists it's important to do it in our bed. She says it shows your love for me by allowing another man into your space. Jenny thinks it's better if you stay, though. She says if you watch, you'll see it's just Zex, but if you leave, you'll wonder if the guy was better or if I might fall for him." After that monologue, Lorna fell silent. "Don't worry, Lorna. If we do this, and it's a big if, you understand, I'll be there." I took a deep breath before continuing. "One question, though. You've explained how I show my love by giving you as a gift, but how and when do you show your love for me?" "Every time, silly. Every time I come back to you, I'm showing you that you're my main man, my one and only love. Love by sloppy seconds, huh? Sorry, Dave, I don't get what you mean." "Don't worry about it, dear. But I've got to say, my first impression isn't great. If we're so incompatible and I don't satisfy you enough, why not try an open marriage? Or better yet, we could bring another woman into bed and both enjoy her," I half joked, but was also half serious. "No, Dave. The thought of you with another woman makes me sick. It's just not natural. It's not going to happen." I pushed further. "Okay, how about bringing in another woman, but I won't touch her. I'll just watch while you two enjoy yourselves." "Gross, Dave. I tried that once in college, and that was enough for me. Have you thought about all the potential outcomes of this? I could lose respect for you. You could lose respect for me. Or I might feel inadequate watching you with someone better." No one could be a better lover than you, Dave. And besides, Jenny has gone through all the possible outcomes and says we've got nothing to lose. Screw Jenny, I muttered under my breath. Lorna, have you really thought about all the possible ramifications? Yes, Dave, I have, and I really want to try it. Can we? She asked, grabbing my arm and pleading with her eyes. Then she grabbed my groin through my boxers, and predictably, my body reacted. See? Little Percy here is clearly on board with my plan. I sighed, frustrated, but all too aware of my own desires. Little Percy hasn't seen any action for almost 2 months. He has no conscience and would happily screw a rattlesnake right now. Please, Dave, won't you at least think about it? She asked sweetly. Okay, Lorna, there's no injury in thinking about it. Now, can we make love? No, Dave, I don't think so, she replied, biting her lip. Why the hell not? I asked, genuinely confused and starting to get angry. Think of it as an incentive to think faster, she said, as if it wasn't emotional blackmail. You do realize that's emotional blackmail, right? Well, I don't agree. I just want to get this out of my system and move on to having kids. My new golden rule: whoever has the gold makes the rules. I groaned inwardly and said, fine, I'll think about it. That week when I went to sabotage her Zex toy again, I noticed a new addition to her toy collection, a Johnson cage. Shame on you, Lorna. You forgot to mention that part. I lasted another 11 days. I'm only human. It was a Wednesday night and we were in bed again. Okay, Lorna, you win. We'll do it your way. But don't blame me if things go south. I urge you to consider all the consequences. Really? Thanks, Dave. I'm sure it'll be a great experience for both of us. Can we do it Friday? Sure, dear. On one condition: you fulfill your wifely duties and hammer me into the mattress right now. Without hesitation, Lorna ripped off my boxers and hers, mounted me, but then suddenly stopped. I could sense her hesitation. There's something I forgot to mention, she said. Oh? And what's that, Lorna? I asked, already sensing where this was headed. Jenny says it's better for both of us if you're tied to a chair while you watch. Tied to a chair? I repeated, incredulous. She says it makes the guy feel more secure that you won't attack him, and it gives me a sense of control. I blinked, trying to process this. You've got to be kidding me. But Lorna wasn't done. Jenny also says it's good if, while we're doing it, we call you names, like chicken or something. I'm not sure why, but Jenny says it really pushes her over the edge. I'm sure you want this to be a perfect experience for me, right? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She resumed her motions, trying to distract me, but I wasn't letting this go. I grabbed her hips and stopped her. Lorna, can we ease into this, please? I'm not ready to give up all control. I can't accept being tied to a chair, but I'll pretend. I'll even put my hands behind my back if it makes you happy. But let's stop there for now. She hesitated, then nodded, realizing she was pushing too hard. Okay, that'll give you the chance to use a video camera. A video camera, Dave? She asked, intrigued. Well, since we'll only do this for a short time and one of us might not like it, I thought we could record it to relive the experience. Lorna thought about it for a moment. Okay, I'll ask Jenny if that's okay. No, Lorna. Don't ask Jenny anything. It's time you made your own decisions. Take responsibility for what you want. She blinked again, as if the idea was new to her, then slowly nodded. Okay, Dave, your call. We won't tie you up, and it would be great to have a video record of the first time you show your love for me this way. Something else was bothering me. Lorna, I'm not thrilled with your idea of trash talk. I think I'll already be uncomfortable with you two, acknowledging that I'm in the room. Can you just pretend I'm not there? Talk among yourselves, call me names if you want, but act like I'm not part of it. If it feels like you're talking directly to me, it would be humiliating. Come on, Lorna. I doubt I could feel more humiliated unless you offered him your maid bum. No, Dave, no one has ever been there, she responded. Even my strength wavered. Unable to stop Lorna from resuming, I let her continue. I'm not especially proud of my stamina that time, but considering the 2 months of blue ball torture, I had an excuse. In my defense, Lorna got off before me, thanks to Zex toy sabotage. The second and third rounds were more brag-worthy, but I was exhausted the next day. The following evening, when I returned home, Jenny was visiting. She looked as proud as if she'd just given birth to triplets. Well done, Dave. You won't regret this. It's the start of a new life for you guys. I pretended not to notice the sharp look Lorna gave her. She had sold this to me as a short-term thing. So, Jenny, what's the next step? Well, Dave, I usually go across town, somewhere I won't be recognized. I find random guys, tell them what I want, and if they agree, we head to the bathroom for an audition. Audition? You know, check their size, just to make sure they're worth it. I don't want to go through all that trouble and end up with a guy who's got nothing going on down there. You want the whole experience to be worthwhile. Once I found the right guy, I either bring him home or tell him to come over the next day. No way, Jenny. If Lorna touched another guy like that, I'd consider it cheating. How about you just pick the first guy who says yes and bring him home? Okay, Dave, you're in charge for now, so we'll do it your way. Good night. After Jenny left, I could tell Lorna still had something on her mind. What's up, Lorna? Well, Jenny didn't want to ask directly, but she was wondering if it's okay if she comes over and watches. No, Lorna, that's not happening. It's bad enough that I'll be sitting there while you screw some stranger and talk trash about me. I don't want her there too. Sorry, honey, I know she's done a lot to help, but I understand. You can show her the video later if you want. Now, how about we go upstairs and get some practice in? Lorna agreed, and we headed upstairs. While undressing, I remembered a question I had on the way home. By the way, who's buying the rubbers, you or me? Jenny says we can't use rubbers, Lorna said hesitantly. What the hell, Lorna? You went off the pill 4 months ago, I replied, frustrated. Yes, but I'm not fertile for another 2 weeks, she explained. Why does Jenny say no rubbers? I asked, still confused. She says it's more, exciting for you if you see me doing it bareback, Lorna continued. She claims it drives husbands to screw their wives immediately after to make sure their seed dominates the other guys. At first, I was worried about diseases, but the more I thought about it, well, it's kind of a hot thought. I can get tested regularly if it bothers you. No way, there are too many dangerous diseases out there. We're not risking it, I said firmly. Okay, fine. Now, how about that lovin' we came up here for? Lorna asked, trying to change the subject. I'm not in the mood anymore, I replied, annoyed. All right, I give in. No rubbers, she relented. Gee, thanks. Speaking of which, could you wear one tonight or pull out? I want to be fresh for tomorrow, Lorna added. Forget it, I said, shaking my head. All right, good night, Lorna said, ending the conversation. Lorna actually took Friday off work. She was so excited. By the time I got home, the house was spotless, and the bedroom was set up. Extra pillows, lights dimmed, bedside lamp angled like a spotlight. Everything. Lorna was practically bouncing with excitement. She was dressed to eliminated by the time Jenny arrived to take her out. I reminded them that with an hour's travel time, I expected them back in 90 minutes. They didn't disappoint too much, returning 96 minutes later with Lorna's chosen guy. I hadn't been idle while waiting. The anticipation made time drag on, to the point where I checked if the clock had stopped. Jenny was nowhere in sight. I was introduced to Jeremy, a good-looking guy about 10 years younger than Lorna and me. He seemed nervous, but relaxed a bit after I assured him I was cool with everything and looking forward to Lorna living out her fantasy. I explained the ground rules and assured him I wouldn't be a threat, even though I was only pretending to be tied to the chair. I also told him that Lorna thought the experience would be better if he and she belittled me with their words, but as if I weren't really there. Jeremy agreed and was fine with me recording the event. He even surprised me by asking for a copy of the video. Throughout all this, Lorna was nearly vibrating with excitement, bouncing from foot to foot, thighs rubbing together. I got hard imagining her underwear drenched from anticipation. With the preliminaries done, I went upstairs to the bedroom and sat in my carefully positioned chair. Since I didn't officially know about the birdcage, I didn't bother with it. I stripped down, knowing that's what Lorna wanted and not wanting to interrupt by waiting for her to ask. The chair was next to the door with a clear view of the bed. After turning on the camera and setting it on the arm of the chair, I put my arms behind my back and waited with barely contained excitement. Everything I had imagined over the past 2 weeks was about to come true. I didn't have to wait long. Barely a minute later, Jeremy and Lorna entered, tearing each other's clothes off. When his underwear came off, I noticed with relief that he was about 2 inches shorter than me, and much thinner. Lorna couldn't hide the disappointment on her face when she saw it. Once they were both unclothed, Jeremy wasted no time, roughly pushing her to her knees. He clearly had experience because, after a few thrusts, he placed one hand over hers and the other on the back of her head. With a flick, he removed her hand from his tool, then pushed her onto her back on the bed and mounted her. The disappointment on Lorna's face returned when she realized he was skipping foreplay. She always loved being pleased with mouth before penetration. But Jeremy didn't waste a second, pounding into her, and within 2 minutes, he was grunting in climax. There was barely enough time for some of the expected trash talk. Come on, baby, let me take you places your husband never has. What's it feel like to be with a real man for a change? Oh, baby, make love to me. My husband doesn't satisfy me anymore. That was all there was time for, as Jeremy quickly finished with a loud series of grunts. He immediately rolled off her. Despite her clear disappointment, Lorna managed to keep up appearances. Throughout the encounter, I noticed her frequently glancing in my direction, particularly at the camera on the arm of my chair. The flashing red light was impossible to miss. I wasn't sure if her performance was more for me or for the camera, but one thing was clear. This was about humiliating me. With a voice thick with lust, she almost groaned, "You can thank my husband for this." I would have never thought of it if he hadn't planted the idea in my head. Come on, lover. Take me places my husband never has. Jeremy, impatient and eager, lined himself up with her and with one mighty thrust entered her from behind. Lorna screamed in pain, misinterpreting it as pleasure or simply not caring in the heat of the moment. Jeremy didn't hesitate, plowing into her relentlessly. Lorna tried to push him away, but she couldn't overpower him. After about half a minute, she gave in and let him take control. Later, when I reviewed the video, I saw Lorna turn toward me, or at least where I had been, with pleading eyes. She mouthed, "Please help me, Dave." It hurts. But I was gone. I couldn't watch anymore. I was standing outside the bedroom door, trying to block out her cries and wishing for it to end. Every instinct told me to protect her, but I reminded myself that she hadn't been my mate for weeks. I timed my re-entry carefully. By the sound of things, Jeremy was nearing his second climax. I dressed in my work suit rather than the casual clothes I had worn earlier and, following my mental script, rushed back into the room just as Jeremy was finishing. Channeling my best Russell Crowe, I shouted, "Lorna, what the hell is this? Who is this guy? Hey, craphead, get out of my house." The video later confirmed the chaos that followed. Jeremy's expression shifted from bliss to confusion to fear. He pulled out of Lorna, leapt off the bed, and grabbed his clothes, nearly breaking the sound barrier as he fled the room. Lorna's relief was short-lived, and her face cycled through emotions before settling on confusion. Torn between following Jeremy and confronting Lorna, I snarled at her, "Stay here, you cheating—" I caught up with Jeremy downstairs as he was hurriedly dressing, his face still full of fear. I watched him calmly as he finished, then casually approached and grabbed him by the throat, pushing him against the wall. I waited until he realized he could still breathe. He looked up at me, the fear in his eyes deepening into pure terror. Holding him pinned with one hand, I pulled out his wallet with the other, opened it, and read his name and address aloud deliberately. Once I knew I had his full attention, I hissed, "Let this be a lesson, son. Never mess with married women. I owe you a beating, but I'm feeling generous. Lorna might ask you to testify in court someday. Here's your story. She picked you up at a bar, you followed her here, and you were screwing her when her husband came home unexpectedly and threw you out. Now, repeat that back to me." It only took him 3 tries to get it right. "All right, I'm not a cruel man. Your sentence is suspended for 7 years. Say anything else during that time, and I promise you'll feel a beating that'll last 14. I let him go, and to my surprise, he didn't immediately run. I shook his hand. "Pleasure doing business, Jeremy." His confused expression was almost comical as he darted to the door, leaving so fast it was like he broke the sound barrier. A few moments later, I heard tires screeching down the road. I casually went back upstairs to the bedroom, where Lorna still lay on the bed, unmoving. Out of respect for our 8-year relationship, I figured I owed her an explanation. "For the record, Lorna, do you realize that in all of this, you never once asked my opinion? Not once in the past 2 days did you ask how I felt about your little scheme. If you had, I hope I would have been honest and told you I found the idea repulsive. I know Jenny convinced you that humiliating me was the goal. But when you look back on this, you gotta ask yourself, who really ended up humiliated here?" I watched as my words sank in, her expression shifting to stunned, and then tears welled up in her eyes. I remained silent for several minutes, letting her process everything. Eventually, her face showed confusion. "What's this really been about, Dave?" "Well, once I realized our marriage was beyond saving, I pretended to go along with your plan to betray me. Given everything you've done, I decided you deserved to leave this marriage with nothing. My problem was figuring out how to make it look like you broke your vows and trigger the infidelity clause in our prenup. But then I realized I didn't need to do anything. You do it yourself. All I had to do was let your plan play out and record it on camera." I nodded toward the camera still resting on the arm of the chair. "I planted the idea of doing it from behind to make the footage as incriminating as possible. The blowjob? That was just a bonus. I almost didn't stay tonight, but decided I had to witness your attempt to destroy me. Now, I'm pretty sure my heart's hardened enough to leave you with nothing, without a chance of me changing my mind. You know what a softie I can be." Lorna's eyes darted between me and the camera as she realized what it represented. I didn't expect her sudden move. She lunged for the camera, grabbed it by the strap, and bolted for the bathroom. Moments later, I heard the toilet flush. I knew the SIM card was gone. I patted my pocket, reassured that I still had the original SIM, the one with Jeremy's permission to be filmed. When Lorna came out of the bathroom, I didn't even look at her. I was too busy retrieving the second camera I'd hidden on the bookshelf. I had put a lot of thought into its placement, the only spot in the room that captured the entire bed but not the chair or door. Reflecting on recent events, I wondered if the participants had addressed the chair's occupant directly, maybe twice. I predicted some of the audio would be compromised, but I was already thinking about at what point the batteries might have conveniently died. I hoped no one would probe too deeply to discover it was plugged into the mains. As Lorna watched me retrieve the second camera, she collapsed in defeat. I felt the need to explain. "For the record, I always treated you with respect and affection, up until you started blackmailing me with Jenny's help. I would have gladly had kids with you and lived happily ever after. I don't know when exactly you went off the rails, but you did. Here's a tip for your next marriage. Don't plot with your friend in a place where you can be overheard by a $249.95 listening device." I then picked up an envelope from the same shelf where the camera had been and handed it to her. She absent-mindedly opened the flap and pulled out the divorce papers. After a minute of her staring blankly at them, I interrupted her. "Yes, Lorna, our marriage is over. I'll leave for the night. When I return, I expect you to be gone. Thank you for 8 mostly happy years, but I hit my breaking point about 3 weeks ago. You can take all your clothes and jewelry, just don't be here when I get back." I warned her not to fight the divorce or the terms. Otherwise, your parents, friends, and fellow church members will all receive a copy of the video. Yes, the one of you puking, being sodomized, and trash-talking me. Don't think little Jeremy will back you up in court. He's going to protect himself. Lorna looked devastated. I could barely hear her when she muttered, "But we already decorated the nursery." Something inside me snapped at that. My dreams of a happy family were shattered too. How selfish had she become? "Maybe you should take your next husband's advice and choose your friends more wisely. Give my regards to Jenny. I certainly will." With that, I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and out the front door, thinking, note to self, find a saner, smarter wife next time. Could I have just said no when Lorna first suggested turning me into a betrayed man? No. The drive was too strong in her. It would have come out eventually in some way or another. Plus, half the insult was in her even asking, and no one likes being blackmailed. Returning to my plan, there was still one loose end, the conniving witch who started all of this. I didn't need to look through the slightly open bedroom curtain to know where she'd be. Jenny wouldn't be able to resist watching my humiliation. That was her payoff, after all, the reward for her months of manipulation. Grabbing the pickaxe handle I'd conveniently left by the front door, I began circling the house. She wasn't at the bedroom window as I'd expected, but hidden in the bushes near the door, waiting for me to leave so she could comfort Lorna. When I saw her, she looked at the weapon in my hand and understood instantly. She realized the camera she held was history, as were her watch and rings if I made it look like a mugging. We locked eyes in the dark, and I saw the moment she understood her only option was to promise silence, unless I eliminated her. After a moment of considering my alibi, I stepped forward. "Hi, I'm Dave. I believe in the equality of the sexes, equal pay, equal respect, and equal accountability for evil acts. I value respect, trust, and honesty above all else. Violate any one of those, and I cut you off. Violate all 3, and I cut you down. I'm not an evil man. An evil man would have enjoyed what I just did. But I didn't. I never said I wasn't satisfied, though. Given the tone and style of the narrative you shared, I would write an after-story or epilogue that maintains the reflective and intense nature of Dave's journey. Here's an extended after-story that builds on the existing themes of control, betrayal, and moving forward. As I walked away from the house that had once been the foundation of my life, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was no satisfaction, only the hollow feeling that comes from the destruction of something I had once held so dear. It wasn't the kind of ending I had ever imagined for myself or for Lorna. Yet, here I was, leaving behind a marriage that had been slowly crumbling from within. The truth once it surfaced, had been far more disturbing than I could have anticipated. But now, the weight of it was gone, lifted off my shoulders. I hadn't planned for it to end like this. In fact, I'd spent weeks hoping, maybe even praying, that there could be some salvaging of what we once had, that the love we built would somehow rise above this mess. But no amount of wishing could undo the damage caused by the manipulation, the deceit, and the betrayal. The seeds of destruction had been planted long before I ever picked up that first voice recorder. As I drove away from the neighborhood for the last time, I caught a glimpse of Jenny's house in my rearview mirror. A part of me wanted to return, to confront her, to make her pay for what she had done, not just to my marriage, but to my peace of mind. She had been a corrosive force from the start, undermining everything with her influence over Lorna. But now, it wasn't worth it. I had extracted what I needed, my freedom, and nothing she could do now would affect me. I was finished with both of them. The house felt smaller as I left it behind, like the memories I had once cherished there had shrunk in significance. Where we had planned a future, where we had spoken about children, all of it felt like a distant dream, a life that no longer belonged to me. I wasn't sad, at least not anymore. No, the sadness had been replaced by something else. Clarity. And with clarity came resolve. In the weeks to come, there would be lawyers, paperwork, and division of assets. But what mattered most was that I had the upper hand. The evidence I had collected, while painful to acquire, was undeniable. I would walk away with everything, the house, the savings, my dignity, and Lorna would be left to pick up the pieces of a life she had single-handedly torn apart. Jenny would go back to her games, maybe find someone else to manipulate, but she'd know I was watching. She'd know that I wouldn't hesitate to strike if she ever came near me again. As for Lorna, I imagined her sitting in the wreckage of our shared past, contemplating where it all went wrong. Maybe she'd finally understand the depth of what she had lost, but by then, it wouldn't matter. By then, I would have moved on, found new purpose, and rebuilt my life with someone who could offer the loyalty and respect I had always valued. Starting over wouldn't be easy, I knew that. Trust would be hard to come by, and the scars of betrayal don't heal overnight. But I still believed in those core values: respect, loyalty, trust, things that had defined me long before this marriage and would continue to define me after. I wouldn't let this break me. If anything, it had made me stronger, sharper. I had learned that sometimes walking away is the only way to win. That night, as I sat alone in a hotel room far from the home I had known for the past 8 years, I felt the first stirrings of something new. Hope. Not the naive kind that believes everything will magically work out, but the kind that comes from knowing that I'd survived the worst of it. I had been tested, my principles had been challenged, and in the end, I had come out with my integrity intact. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to it. There would be no more deceit, no more lies, no more games. I would build something real, something that would last, and this time I would choose more wisely.